Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Gertrude. Hello, I am Shaté Hayes. I am originally from Houston, Texas, but I am based in the Atlanta area in Georgia. And I am a writer and a creative strategist. But where I started, a creative career strategist, where I started in my first career is a professional dancer and choreographer. And I've danced my entire life, but never knew that I would have it as a career. Never crossed my mind that I could have that as a career. I didn't grow up like most dancers who were commercial dancers the way that I was, who saw Michael Jackson videos or who saw Janet Jackson videos and they just knew that that's what they were going to do. I didn't grow up with cable, so I didn't see such thing. But there were shows like In Living Color where there were dancers at the top of the show. And that just really, really resonated with me. So I went to college and my parents said, don't major in dance, even though I had been dancing my whole life. And it never crossed my mind that I would do anything else. And so even throughout college, I performed the entire time. I was always a cheerleader. I was on step teams. I was just literally never not performing. And when I graduated from school, I decided to pursue a professional dance career. And there was something within me, that's the only way I can explain it, something within me that said, if I'm going to be doing something every single day, all day, I want to love what I'm doing. And so I set out with a couple of bucks in my pocket to Los Angeles to pursue a dance career, not knowing what to do, how to do it, who to connect when I got there. But I had the support of my parents, which was really, really helpful. And I got there and I figured it out. And then 12 years later, I had built a lovely career that I adored as a dancer, as a choreographer for tons of regional theater, which I loved. I got a master's in dance and I went on to be a dance educator and taught all over Texas and college campuses and helped dancers with their technique and with their career and life skills until I started to really, really, really fall in love with career development. It was actually in grad school that I was asked to teach a career resources course and fell in love with being able to impart the wisdom to future dancers the way that I wish I had had when I started. And so I built The Working Dancer, and that was all types of career and business insights for aspiring and current professional dancers. I started writing for Dance Magazine and Point Magazine, and the rest is really history. I eventually transitioned into career development full-time. I had a corporate career in ed tech as a career coach, and within about 5.5 years, had gone on to become the VP of a career programs team. And now I'm back on my own, and I get to help creatives and organizations convey messages that win clients or jobs. So I get to help people tell their stories, help people love their jobs and live their purpose. And it's something that I'm absolutely passionate about, excited to be talking about today.
Listen, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. The power of transition. What are the key challenges that you faced during your transition from the arts to the corporate world, and how did you overcome them?
Yes. So the transition, I'll start with the things that sort of caught me off guard. I had this feeling that I knew I was ready to transition. I knew I was ready for something more, but I didn't know what that more was. So one of the challenges I faced early on was like, what is the thing that I'm going to do? Even though I had already started to help artists build their careers, it wasn't quite obvious to me that that was actually going to be my career. And that was a little bit difficult. And I will say, I had so attached my identity to being a professional dancer. It was like something that I was so proud of and like, oh my gosh, I made my dreams come true. So when I decided then to do something else, I was caught off guard by the identity crisis that I had. It was kind of like, how do I present myself as anything other than a professional dancer? What does that mean? Who am I, kind of thing? And so that was very, very difficult. And I'll say, in addition to sort of the identity piece and like, what am I going to do now? It was really difficult, I think, to finally land somewhere without fully having done the self-reflection and to have the self-awareness into the next thing. So those are things I definitely recommend before taking a big leap the way that I did. But I was able to, eventually get still enough to have that reflection, that awareness. And then, it was obvious at a certain point, like, oh, of course I'm going to continue doing career work because I love this.
So, what did inspire you to create The Working Dancer? And
Mhm.
how has it impacted the lives of artists who are seeking sustainable careers?
I adore The Working Dancer because I built it for my younger self. It was everything that I wish I had had when I was getting started. When I was starting my dance career, content marketing wasn't necessarily a thing. So you couldn't find a bunch of information on the internet and, sort of Google how to become a dancer. You had to sort of know someone that knows someone and get connected to the right communities. And then you organically kind of found your way there. And
Yes.
one of the things that I learned when I was in grad school and then started, supporting undergrads with their careers and the questions that they had, I really had a heart for like, oh, people who were like, oh my goodness, I'd love to do some of the same things that you've done. Can you help me? And I never fully had the time to sit and touch everyone the way that I really wanted to like really engage deeply. And so writing then became the outlet for that. And it was like, let me just brain dump everything that I can think of, from what did it mean to do my taxes? What did it mean to budget? What did it mean to turn down a job? What did it mean to, you can find a ton of information on auditioning, but I wanted to talk about, okay, how do I actually build this career? How do I actually have a body of work that will sustain a living? So I think it meant so much to me, my younger self, 1000%. I still have students that I used to teach maybe like 7 or 8 years ago who I'm still connected with through The Working Dancer, who are still reading those posts and those blog posts. I get about maybe 2 or 3 folks on my email list to this day from content that I wrote like 8 years ago on how to be a professional dancer. And I'm certain things have changed in the industry since then, but it just goes to show you the power of just having that piece of inspiration, that piece of insight, someone sort of trying to show you the way in the best way that they possibly can. And I think it's meant a lot to a lot of dancers.
So, what motivated you to found the Career Steward, and how does it help professionals navigate their career transitions?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I said before my story that I transitioned from being an educator and sort of in my dance career to a corporate career in ed tech. So I was supporting workforce development programs. And I really, really loved that work. I've been fortunate to build bodies of work that I've loved, and I don't take that for granted. And during that time, what I really liked about working in the ed tech space and helping professionals, workshops, curriculum, coaching, all of those things, was that I was actually touching so many different professionals from so many different backgrounds. I love that the most. One of the things that I'm not a fan of in workforce development programs is that sometimes it can feel like the employer or the job is almost more important than the professional itself. So as long as we have these employer partnerships, we've got these big name companies who are looking for talent at our programs, for example, then it's somehow like, can we make this person fit into this job, even if it doesn't make sense for them? And that really bothered me a lot because I often said, Well, what if they don't want that kind of job? Or what if they wouldn't be happy there? Or what if their purpose for something else and it, for the outcomes to say that we got, 10 out of 10 people a job, sometimes it felt like it had to be at the expense of the professional. So I wanted to help people in their careers in a way that centered the professional, that honored their calling, that honored what their strengths were, what their values were, what they felt purposed for. And that is why it's called Career Steward. I want to help professionals be a good steward of their calling, of their gifts, of their careers. And so we really focus on that as the outcome.
So how do you integrate your creative background into your role as a career strategist and program leader?
That's such a good question, because I somehow thought that when I was done being a professional dancer that, that was it. I've sort of moved on and maybe left that part of behind. Not in that I always introduced myself as, a dancer. I was a dancer first, but I never imagined that I'd be using all of the skills that I grew and acquired in that career and what I do now. And so I'll give you some examples. Creativity is in everything that I do as a strategist. Even just in that name, the amount of creative solutions that I get to come up with, how I get to design solutions to problems. I get to design or help strategize someone's where they are now and help them get to where they're going to be. I think about the type of resilience that it's given me in my work. I think about the how I'm able to think quickly, move quickly. So if you think about improvisation and like how you have to just be able to make things work on the fly, like all of that I use in my work. I have sort of an adaptability and a flexibility in my work that I'm sure I got from my dance career. So there's so many things that me being a creative has been such an asset to the work that I've been doing recently and what I'm doing now.
And I love it because most creatives are just making things up as you go. Sometimes you get those little happy accidents, a move that just worked at the right time, but it wasn't planned. And it's nice to see that you can transition those skills into business as well. That's quite fascinating. Can you share some of the initiatives that you've led that focus on career development for historically excluded populations?
That's a really interesting question. That's not a question I've gotten on a podcast before, but I'll talk a little bit about some of the work that I did in my corporate career. And I was often tasked with those initiatives for historically maybe excluded or underserved populations. One of the projects or programs I was able to support and lead is when the organization that I was working with partnered with Netflix to offer boot camps, like access to tech learnings for HBCU students. And I was like just super proud to be a part of that program and supporting the career support and the mentorship for that program.
Okay.
There were also lots of moments. Another initiative that I was really proud of, we offered a scholarship program for students through Girls Who Code. And so we were looking for young girls to give them scholarships to take, boot camps that in partnership with Girls Who Code. And that was really profound. The other thing I'll say is during my time at this organization, I was the global chair of our ERG, so our resource group, employee resource group for Black employees and their allies. And so there was about a 600 member affinity group that I was tasked with leading and offering programming to help them feel belonging and connection at the organization, and then also to help them feel like they could advance their careers within the organization. And so for about 2 years, I led that alongside an incredible group of other leaders in the organization. And so those are definitely some of the programs I'm really proud of.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like you've really put yourself out there in so many different ways. Now, I'm curious to know a little bit more about the empowered path. The concept, how does the empowered path mean to you? What does it mean to you? And how do you guide others to find theirs?
Yeah, the empowered path means to me, it's a simple way to remember, I think, what are the most essential steps to finding a path that offers more joy and purpose and more freedom. And so the reason that it's even spelled this way is because it centers on 3 M's, right? So to me, the empowered parts of it are the match, the make, and then the market. And so for the match phase, I think in a transition, if you're building something new, whatever it is, to find your most fulfilling path, you first have to start with alignment. Like it is critical. I see often people who are trying to leave one job to the next, for example, and they're just running from the thing without having done any reflection about what the next thing is. And then they get to the next job and then they find that they hate that also, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to really spend the time to do the reflection. This is the part where strengths finders or strengths assessments or any type of values assessments, those types of things are key in that phase. And then you also want to do a little bit of research. So it looks like me knowing who I am, if these are my top strengths, if these are my top values, if this is how I want to live my life, let me do some research to see what body of work fits within that or aligns with that. If these are the causes that are important to me, like you really need to find the alignment. And I often know when there's alignment, like you can almost feel it, like someone lights up, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they're lighting up about what they're talking about, even if it's in a way that scares them a little bit, that's where the money is. That's the sweet spot there. And the second M is to make. I think it's important to make over your presence, make over the story that you're telling yourself. So for example, not telling yourself, telling about yourself. For example, I could not have become a career coach in an ed tech company if I was telling the story of me as a professional dancer. If I was saying only I taught technique and I taught jazz and hip hop and ballet, but they're looking for someone to help with careers, I could not have gotten that role. So you have to really think about the through line, connect the dots in your story, make that over, and then make sure your presence online and everywhere else is in alignment. And then the last M is that market. Like it's about strategically connecting with the people that you're meant to serve, whether that be in a job market or whether that be as an entrepreneur. But it's like, how can you leverage your network to find those people, get in front of those folks, plant yourself in communities, and be there in service to those communities. And so those 3 steps, match, make, and market, I think are the keys to career fulfillment, in my opinion.
I love it. When I saw the way you wrote empowered, this is why I put it on screen. I thought there's got to be something else here. There's a source, some juice that we need to share. So thank you for sharing that. It's so simple, but not simple at the same time. You've mentioned overcoming the fear of being seen during your performance career. How has this personal growth influenced your approach to coaching others?
It's given me an empathy for people. And it's almost, it's funny to even say, it's such an oxymoron to say, like, I was a performer, but I was afraid to be seen. Because there is still something so very vulnerable about performing in front of others. But I can definitely say that while a lot of performers, not most, might have a more ego-centered sort of engagement with it, that means that maybe they want to do all the solos and they want to be front and center, they want to be seen. To me, the way that I approach that work and the way that I approach any of my work is that I'm in service to a cause. I'm in service to the project. I'm in service to the people around me. And so it was always a very spiritual thing for me. In fact, my graduate school thesis was on the intersection between creativity and the divine, the creativity or dance and spirituality. And so there was something always about tapping into a higher good or a higher cause than me. And so even with that knowing and with that perspective, I was really afraid for people to see like really into me because I was afraid of being judged, and I was afraid of what people might say or if I wasn't good enough and, those types of things. And so it's taken a lot of work, intention, therapy, reflection, journaling, all the things for me to quite honestly get to a place where I accept me, flaws and all. I love me, flaws and all. And it's that radical acceptance that has allowed me to give myself permission to be seen. And so when I recognize that and people that I support, and it can show up in like imposter syndrome, it could show up in shrinking back, it could show up in, people think their stories aren't good enough to be told, they're not sensational enough to be told. Like all of those are the same kind of version of, or a different version of like not enoughness that I'm able to really recognize and kind of pull at that thread and help them through it.
Well, that is just awesome. Now, what are some key lessons that you've learned from building and scaling career programs? And how do you ensure that they remain impactful?
You give me some really, really great questions here, Gertrude. What have I learned about scaling programs? I will say it's all about, I think my key values are people and performance, always. And when it comes to scaling something, you can't do one without the other. You've got to have, both internally, you got to have the right people in place, the right people, they have to know the why, they got to be connected to it, they have to care about the cause. And then the performance part of that internally is you've got to have the right systems, structures, processes in place. So as long as there's like a culture around what you're doing, meaning there is a North Star that everybody believes in and understands, that there are systems around how to measure how we're getting to that North Star, that there's an outcome that are people-centered, those are the types of things that you can grow. And those are the things that are long-lasting. And so whenever I'm tasked with building a program, scaling a program, operationalizing a program, those are the things I look for. I'm like, are the right people in place? Are the right systems in place so that people can feel successful? And then are the outcomes focused on the people enough? And those I think are the most successful ones for sure.
And then you have impact. I love that. You're very systems driven from what I can hear.
Absolutely, which is interesting too, because I consider myself a creative, but I'm very much right and left brained.
Yes, I can hear that. It's fascinating because normally you're either one or the other. It's very rare that you find somebody who can merge the two. So what are your goals for the future of Career Steward? And how do you see your future work evolving to meet the challenging needs of professionals in various industries?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question with some dreams. I would love to just help more people tell their stories. And so if there's a world where I could be helping hundreds of people or even thousands of people per year to tell their story in a way that makes them feel confident and seen and understood and proud of who they are and what they have to offer the world, oh, that would just light me up so much. If there's a world also where I could maybe be telling stories on a larger scale so that some of the clients, I have a client now who I'm supporting with storytelling through video production. And so is there more of that? Is there perhaps someone who needs a book ghost written, right? Like things like that. Yeah. And then for locally, I'd love to open a co-working space for creatives or creative types where we are able to dream and build and collaborate and do things of that nature, but on the south side of Atlanta, because there's not a lot of that. There's more of that on North Atlanta. And I'd like to have something for our community where, Atlanta obviously has a large population of people of color, but for some reason, a lot of those types of services are not on the south side. And so I'd like to have something like that for us in areas where we're more concentrated.
So there's a beautiful opportunity for you being in that particular location.
Absolutely.
I love it. My next question is going to be a bit of a time experiment where I am going to teleport you into your past. We're going to meet that young woman, that young dancer who went into the world of dance and arts. And if you could go back and give her 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would you have wanted somebody to have told you before you started?
First, I would hug her and I would tell her I see you and I love you and I am proud of you. I would tell her, number 1, take your time. Like, trust the process. I was in such a hurry to get somewhere. I don't know where I was in a hurry to get to, but take your time. You're okay. I would tell her to trust yourself and yeah, don't waver. Don't compare yourself. Like, what you have to offer is good. And I would tell her, baby girl, you are magic. Like, don't doubt yourself. What you have to offer the world is not ordinary, it's extraordinary. Trust that, lean into that, and allow it to take you to beautiful places.
I love that. So those are just beautiful answers. And I like asking that question in case there is a young person who's listening to this podcast. Just trusting yourself because you're born and you're wired to dance. Whether
Yes.
you're dancing, whether you're writing, whether you're singing, whatever it is you do, you have it.
Yes.
But you have to go within. So now let's go into the future.
Okay.
Last question. And you're now 90 years old.
Yeah.
And you're sitting in your rocking chair on your porch, surrounded by your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, whoever is with you at the end.
Yeah.
If you could go and have a conversation with this wise woman who's led you to this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her?
Oh, to this wise woman, I would also hug her and say, I love you and thank you. And I'm proud of you. And I would say to her, I know you've been here all along, ushering me to get to this place, that you've been guiding me, that you've been patient with me, that you've been kind with me. And I would just say thank you for helping me to get here, for trusting me to get here, and for, yeah, everything that you're leaving behind. I'd say thank you.
I absolutely love this interview. You know, sometimes not many people get this question.
Mhm.
I love this question because a lot of women don't realize that the wise woman is already here. She's
Yes.
already in us. She's that little voice that whispers, go left, go right, say yes, say no. But we look outside of ourselves for answers all the
Mhm.
time, and yet we forget to go within.
Yeah.
And I started playing with the energy of who I am becoming. I normally go into my meditation and my prayers, and I can ask myself very simple questions like, okay, I'm here, but what is the next step? And I sleep on that. Then I wake up in the morning and I have my light bulb moments where, like, a flash of inspiration comes and I know exactly what to do next. Or I keep talking about it to the people that I meet during the day. And one person will say this, the next person will say that. By the end of the day, I've got it all figured out.
Yes.
So you kind of symbolize everything that I try to coach and mentor women to remember, that you've got this. You were born with all of the talent, all of the skills to do what you feel is burning in your heart for you to execute. But we need to trust ourselves. We need to go within to find those answers. I absolutely love your work. I feel so honored to have met you. This is like one of the best interviews I've ever had.
Oh, thank you, Gertrude.
As you're talking, I'm just saying, yes, yes. Everything you said just resonates with my vision, my mission, my reason for being on the planet. You know, her story is all about writing women's stories into history.
Yes.
A lot of women go to their graves with these stories. And yet, your story can be the light at the end of the tunnel for someone else. It can be the path that leads somebody there. We need to leave these trails, these breadcrumbs for others to follow, and we make the journey easier for them. So,
Mhm.
how can people find you? What can people expect when you take them on as a client?
Yes, amen to everything you just said, Gertrude. Like 1,000%.
Yeah.
Folks can find me. I see you have my personal website here. That is a perfect place to find me. You can also look up the company careersteward.co, and we're on the internet in all places. I am Shaté or at Career Steward, and both of those lead to me. And when folks work with me, I help them walk their empowered path, like we said before. So I help them align with a clear brand identity and a story, like what they're offering. I help them to tell their story in a compelling way that wins clients or jobs, and then I help them strategically connect with the people that they're meant to serve. So give them a roadmap so they can walk it out and live their purpose and love their work.
Fantastic. Shaté, thank you so much for coming online and honoring us with your presence and your story. You've definitely added to this volume of work and content that is evergreen. It's always going to be online and people always have access to this video. So I really thank you for stepping up and saying yes to the interview. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Do you mind if I share one last thing?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So for anyone who just needs a little bit of a guide to figure out what's next for them, I have free resources too. Like I said before, I try to leave behind anything that I wish I had had when I was coming along. And so at lightmycareermatch.com, there are resources there. There's a career match guide, and then I'll also email you a couple of additional resources to really help you reflect and get started on a path that'll light you up. So thank you again for having me. This has been just such a treat.
Absolutely awesome. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We are a social impact movement, a group of over 90,000 women in 45 countries who share our stories to uplift you, energize you, and inspire you. We try to share these stories so the story becomes the light at the end of your tunnel. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thanks again, Shaté.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.